Hello and welcome to this week's IG Live. Today I am thrilled to be talking to Violet Duncan. And for those that missed it, she is actually giving away her middle grade novel, Buffalo Dreamer. So go to our pinned post for a chance to enter. You don't want to miss it. This is an award-winning book, and actually it was a finalist last year for the National Book Award in the category for young people's literature. So it is a really wonderful book. We're going to dig into it and talk more about it. If you did see the announcement of the giveaway, then you have a little bit of an overview of the book, but we're going to talk about it more. So don't miss your chance to win your own copy of it. We come to you every Thursday with interviews with authors, illustrators, sometimes even publishers of diverse children's books. And so thank you all for your support in making programs like this possible. And again, we're going to be talking about Buffalo Dreamer from Violet Duncan. She's also written picture books. We're mostly going to be focusing on the middle grade book, but just so you know, hello. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you for joining us again today. And I think probably a lot of people might know who you are, but go ahead, introduce yourself and tell us what was your journey to becoming an author? Because I think you have kind of an interesting story.
Yeah. Okay. Danse, everyone. Nitigasun, kayas kisigisquel, dapoy mil kisagaw na mitotak, dapoy mil kisagaw na gamukti. My name is Violet Duncan. I am Plains Cree and Taino nations. I hail from Kihuen Cree Nation up in northern Alberta, Canada, but now I reside with my family in Arizona. And so a lot of my inspiration comes from my children, from traveling the lands and being in relationship with community and land and culture. I started my very first journey. Actually, it's that book right there. It's called When We Dance, and that was my first self-published book. I made it for my baby, my youngest daughter, Manaya, and it's called When We Dance, and it was a story that shared what we were teaching her at the time. So she was like 1 year old, and we were talking about when we dance, and we always talk to our children like they're little adults, even at one. And so when we'd say, when we dance for the plants and the animals, and we dance for those who can't dance, and we dance for those who came before us, our ancestors, we dance for those who are not born yet. And so that's what that book is all about, is about kind of that relationship between mother and daughter, of why we dance and when we dance. This is who we do it for. The actual reason behind the story, besides the fact that I wrote this story, is at the time there was no books that looked like us, that had aunties and uncles and these relationships that were very, very different. The only books we could find were set like in the 1800s or pre-contact. And it was really, really frustrating because the first things we wanted to get our baby was a baby blanket, a book, and a little toy. And the book was the most frustrating part. And of course, a lot of the stories were written by non-native people. So the illustrations were also frustrating because it would be like a Lakota story, and then they would have somebody dressed in Navajo attire. And it would be like, what? Like, this is so unauthentic, inaccurate, and it's just not a good way to start our little one's book journey. And so yeah, that's why I started self-publishing, and then that's the inspo behind book number one.
I love it. And before we continue, I just want to say thank you to our viewers. We have somebody joining from Switzerland and somebody from Violet's home community in Alberta. So special. Thank you all for joining us. And I'm curious because, like you said, you started off writing picture books. We're mainly going to be focusing on your middle grade novel. And I'm curious, was it hard to make that transition from writing picture books to writing a middle grade novel?
Well, actually, picture books is where my heart is. I never imagined that I would ever write a middle grade novel. I was kind of following in step with my children. So right now, my youngest is 9 years old. But at the time of the middle grade writing it, I think my eldest was 12 years old, and then it went down from there, 12, 10, 8, and 3. And yeah, picture books have a special place because it's the way that I enjoy reading about other cultures as well, especially when it's written and published by somebody of that culture, because you really get this real insightful read. And it's simplified because it's for kids, but I love that way of learning. But when I started writing Buffalo Dreamer, I actually didn't intend it. I had no idea what it was for, who it was for. I started writing it as a way of just kind of sharing what was in my heart. We had just found out about the unmarked graves at the BC Indian Residential School in Kamloops. And at the time, as I'm scrolling through and refreshing, they had just found the remains of somebody who could have been 3 years old. And at that time, my 3-year-old just decided to fold themselves into my lap. And I just started crying because it was just too close. And of course, it was during the pandemic. So my kids were like right in my face. What's wrong? Why are you crying? What's on your phone? And so as I was sharing what that is, basically the very beginning, because my eldest had an idea about the Indian residential school, but in their mind, they actually thought it was a long time ago. It was the first time that I had mentioned that it's Mushum that attended. And when my dad came walking through, she looked at him and was like, oh my gosh, this happened to him. And right there, I was like, ooh, I need to stop this because I want them to feel like Mushum is not any different. He's a warrior, he's a grandfather, he's my father, that is just this whole powerful being, and I don't want him to be reduced to this survivor because he's just done so much for our family and the community. And so I wanted to inform them without them feeling like they had to feel bad, because these survivors, these warriors that had gone through the Indian residential school system, they worked so hard for us to get to where we are through education, through healing, through language revitalization. And that's what I wanted my kids to know, that this happened, but in spite of that, our people are still kind of trudging on and pushing on and making sure that that never happens again. And they asked, how can we be a part of it? And so when I'm writing, it was basically, it felt too adult to be for kids, but it felt too kid-like to be for adults. And so, yeah, I didn't know who my audience was. And when I approached my editor, she was like, middle grade. And I'm like, okay.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned about how recent they were, because I think that was really surprising for me as well. You know, I don't think I learned about residential schools until I was an adult. And even then, it was presented as something that happened kind of a long time ago. To the fact that there would still be people alive that have gone through this. And so how did you, like you say, you know, you're trying to figure out how to tell your kids that you don't want them to feel bad, but you also don't want to sugarcoat what happened. How did you find a way? Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the book and kind of how you found a way into the story that had that balance.
I have to say, I leaned heavily on just how I was raised. My mom and my dad, our conversations were, nothing was taboo around the dinner table. We talked about substance abuse, suicide. We talked about issues that are happening in the community, poverty. And on top of that, my parents were both involved in social justice theater. So they were involved with showing the community what is happening. And when it's in your face performing and you see young people saying this is a problem, it really stirs the community. And that started at home. That started around our dinner table. And so I hope that I'm doing that same thing with my children, that anytime they ask a question, I do make sure my response is age appropriate. But yeah, we do talk about what happened, how the kids were taken, what happened in the schools. Different perspectives is also really important. My dad talks about his time in the schools through humor. And I'm like, Dad, this is really serious. And he'll be like talking about it and laughing about it. And then my cookum, my grandmother, talks about zero. She talks about one day where she went figure skating or skating. She learned how to skate, and she refused to talk about anything else, good or bad, that happened in the school. So it was really important that they learned perspective, that not everybody looked at the schools in one way. And everyone is entitled to their own feeling and thought behind it, and therefore my children are also entitled to their own feeling and thought. And so my eldest, of course, was the most angry. She wants to be a psychologist, so she took like the mental health perspective. And my youngest was just is so empathetic. He has such a big heart, and he wanted to go to the actual residential school that the book is based off of. He wanted to go there and witness it and see it, and we did. We went there. It's actually switched now. It's called Blue Quills, but it's a university. I don't know if it's the only one of its kind, but it was really powerful because in the 70s, this school, they actually had this huge sit-in. So a bunch of Native members, the community members came in and said, you know, we are sick and tired of you taking our kids and doing this. And they changed. And it was our ancestors, our relatives that did that. So we were able to regain control of the school and have Native educators. And today it's a college and a university where you can hear the Native language resonating in the hallways. And my youngest needed to see that, needed to see what's happening to that particular school that we talk about, my dad's school, what's happening now. So we all kind of learn in different ways, and everything is valid. And so the way Summer was cautious and really careful and didn't want to, you know, hurt somebody's feelings, that kind of felt like my oldest, where Autumn is like, no, we need to get the facts, you know, none of this tiptoeing. That felt like my second youngest, Natanis, because she's like, no business. I want to know everything, and I want to know it now. And I'm like, yes, we need both. We need gentle warriors, and we need our fierce ones as well.
I love that, because I think that really does come across in the book through those two characters in particular, but also the elders. And I think it was maybe Summer's mom, I can't remember, who is talking like, you know, you need to be careful of their feelings, you know, the elders, but they all have, as you mentioned, different ways of dealing with it and talking about it, and when they're ready and when maybe they don't want to talk about it. So I thought that came across so beautifully. But maybe we should back up and tell us a little bit, for those that aren't familiar with the book, what the basic premise of the book is, so they know kind of what we're talking about. It's such a great book.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Okay, so Buffalo Dreamer follows this young girl named Summer, and she is off on summer vacation up to her community, which is what my family does every summer. The very last day of school, I have the vehicle packed, and early the next morning, we are gone. So this book follows almost in parallel with my life and how we kind of learned about it as well. When she goes to her community, there's a lot of news vans, and there's something happening at the Indian residential school system, or Indian residential school. And she asks her mom, you know, what's going on? What is that? And right away, when they're greeted, there's some hush going around about unmarked graves and the Indian residential school. And what we find out is that they have found unmarked graves at that residential school, and the community wants to come together to acknowledge this and to see what are we going to do about it, because these were children who were just unceremoniously buried, and we want to bring them home, which is what many Native communities are doing. And how do we do that in a good way? And at the same time, Summer is getting these dreams about her own insight on what it felt like for a young girl to escape the Indian residential school. And that story actually follows very closely to my auntie Daisy. She ran away during a blizzard. She didn't make it very far. She unfortunately had to turn back home because she was hungry and cold. But I always thought, what if she got away? What if she made it? What if she found somebody to take care of her? And this is kind of like my hope and dream of what could happen.
Right. And I want to talk about that a little bit. I don't want to give any spoilers, but I love the way kind of that story is concluded, of the girl that she's having these dreams about. But that having that element of kind of this spiritual connection and the dreams, why was that something that was important to bring into the book?
So for me personally, dreams have always been really insightful. I've always looked into why am I dreaming that, or why do I feel this way, or what is this trying to tell me? A very special story is I actually dreamed about dancing in this one courtyard when I was, I think it was 2006. I was staying with my mom, and she is choreographing this theater show, this play. And I kept having the same dream of dancing in this courtyard, and I could see the fringe of my shawl, and I was like, oh my gosh, this courtyard is so beautiful, and I'm dancing and it keeps coming back again and again. And then as we're talking, an ad comes on that says visit Italy, and it was that same courtyard, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to go to Italy. Eventually I was able to go to Italy just 3 months later, and I never found that courtyard, which is like a bummer. But I was on tour for a week with my now husband, and I just fell head over heels. I never would have gone to Italy with this group, which is his family. But he was so gung ho with me on finding that courtyard, and we just had the best time. And so when I came back, my mom was like, did you see the courtyard? Did you get to go? And I'm like, no, but Tony is so amazing and he's so funny. And she's like, okay, I think I know why you had to go to Italy. So I really feel that these dreams, they help us, and whether they're super vivid like summers where you get the feeling, you feel the cold, you feel the hunger. Sometimes we need to experience that to acknowledge it for ourselves, that it was, we think about the time in Indian residential school, and we think about, the discipline, but we don't really think about the hunger, like really how it feels to be so hungry, and to know that you live off the land, that your food is just right there, that you would normally gather with family. You're not allowed to. The cold, that your family has clothes that can keep you warm, but you're forced to be into this uniform that is not ready for a Alberta winter. And so sometimes we need to see that head on and feel that. And I wanted Summer to kind of experience that without what happened in the school. I didn't really want to talk about the abuse in the school, because I was looking out for my auntie who's going to read it, who doesn't like to read about what happened in the school. And I wanted her to see, maybe this could have happened. Maybe this could have been you. The elders that actually find the young girl are actually, their names are my grandparents. So Julia and George. And I was like, everybody has their, I've used their name, but I've always felt that my grandparents like that they actually worked within the prison system later on to help those who kind of went through that tunnel of Indian residential school to prison, to help them come and heal. And I've always seen them as healers. And so I wanted them to be a part of the story, as well as these people that were able to save and protect.
That's so beautiful. And that's something that I think you bring out a lot in the book. It's not just about the residential schools, it's also about present day. Although I think you're really careful about using the word resilience. I think I read an interview where you were saying, that shouldn't be put on Native communities, that we always have to be resilient, that you can still acknowledge what happened, that maybe healing. I don't know, what would be a better word for that, to kind of show like modern communities who are very vibrant, very loving. Summer's family, you just want to be there on vacation with her family because they have so much fun and they're so loving and warm. I don't know if you do want to talk a little bit about that, why it was important for you not just to write about the past, but also about the present.
Yeah, I would have to say my favorite word would be Indigenous joy, because
Mm.
that just means like that going to a powwow, whether you're a powwow dancer or not, or having fry bread or picking berries, and that kind of quiet moment where you hear everybody kind of chit-chatting and you hear the plunk 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 of the berries falling into their buckets, or sweetgrass, that sound when the wind catches in the grass and it goes like, and it's just really quiet. Those moments of Indigenous joy is not resiliency. I feel that we didn't have to suffer to get here.
Mhm.
But we can still, even if we're going through, because there's still a lot of work to be done in our communities. Like poverty is up, suicide is up, substance abuse is up. we don't have to have gone through something to finally experience this Indigenous joy. We can experience Indigenous joy in our families, in our culture, in our homes, however they are, because some people are living, you know, 3, 4 families all together, but there's still that joy that can be found there. And I think I like that a little bit better. And I think that in the book, that's what I feel that I want others to know, because I know when I visit my auntie and it's a whole different house and it's a whole different vibe, but that joy is still there. And maybe they're the musicians of the family and, you know, they'll take out a guitar, or maybe it'll be another family where they are just, you know, right involved politically, and I can just get all the good gossip on the res. And, you know, it's just that we can't stop sharing and loving and being community despite of everything that's happened. We still just are so in love with the land, and our culture is so all encompassing, spiritually, mentally, physically. We're just there's nothing that will not support you within the culture. It's just yeah, and finding that Indigenous joy in what you do. And I hope that this book is that tiny mirror or that window to others, but the mirror to other Native families that say, this is what our families are like. This is it doesn't feel normal at the time because it's loud and it's crazy and you're like, you know, living on the land, but yeah, it's good. This is what
Special, yeah.
a normal or abnormal Native family is like in the community, and it's good.
And we have to talk about the aunties because they're such wonderful characters. And as she mentions in the book, that doesn't necessarily mean someone you're biologically related to. Sometimes it's just someone of that generation in your community, but they're so wonderful. And I wanted to talk about one of my favorite characters who's not a main character, who's Summer's Auntie Crystal, who is two spirits. And I thought that was so great to have that representation in the book, even though it's not even a main they're not even a main character in the book, and it's not much fanfare when they're introduced, but just kind of like you said, just a normal part of her family. Why was it important for you to have that kind of representation?
So I'm so happy you brought up Auntie Crystal. That's my little sister, and the Two Spirit community is basically the glue that holds us all together. They are that in between. When I don't understand my son and his sports and his statistics, my sister, my Auntie Beanie, is there to help explain and be the mediator. When my husband is trying to understand our daughters and clothing, Auntie Beanie is there because they are in the middle. They have this special gift, this sacred power about them. And in the community, it really doesn't feel whole until everyone is there. Our elders, our young people, our aunties and uncles, and our two spirit relatives. We all need to be present to have kind of quorum, to feel community. And I really wanted to make sure that my little sister was witnessed, but also my eldest is non-binary. They go by they, them. And it's very rare that they get to actually see their pronouns being used in a book. And so I wanted to make sure that it was not this huge, hello, welcome, this is they, them, they are non-binary. You know, it's just a very normal thing to do because in our family, it is. When we went to a birthday party, my daughter said, okay, everyone, introduce yourself to my mom and make sure you tell my mom your pronouns. And I was like, oh, that's new. And it was really helpful because it's just so we can talk humanely to each other and make sure that everybody is seen and everybody is respected. And so the same in this book. And of course, the style is totally not imaginated. My little sister has like the coolest hats and matching vests, and there's something about like Two Spirit identity that you just are instantly cool. So I had to make sure that that was in there, that style that they go by.
I love that. Well, I'm just looking at the time and I want to respect your time. So I feel like we could keep on talking about this book forever. Again, this is Buffalo Dreamer. But I do want to give you space if you want to talk about your upcoming projects. I believe you have a picture book coming out soon. Is that right?
It's finally coming out. That is so. This book, When We Dance, has now going to be traditionally published. And
Mm.
back in 2020, when we signed on a whole bunch of books with Penguin Random House, When We Dance was one of the stories that I was like, I wrote this story. Let me know what you think. And my editor was like, this is so beautiful. Of course, let's get it signed. But as time goes by, we actually use the word phrasing and life is a dance in the book. And so we decided to use that as the title. And her name is Kelsey Mata, and she's the illustrator. And I got a sneak peek last week, and the illustrations are gorgeous. There's so many layers. I am so picky as well, because I wanted it to feel like bright and to have like culture etched everywhere, and she did such an amazing job. She's playing, she it made it look fantastic. So that comes out next fall 2026. And then we have like another book coming out summer 2027, and fall. It goes back and forth. We have 4 children's books coming out, and I'm just signing up for my next middle grade. So that
So
one's
that
going to
was
be
my next
fun.
question: is whether you're going to write more middle grade as well.
I did. I wanted this one to be kind of like an homage to my son. I wanted
Um,
my son to know that I believe in your strength. You are capable. You know, you don't need to feel that you need technology and that you need vehicles, and you can survive on your own. And so I literally threw this poor 14-year-old or 13-year-old boy into the wilderness of Montana, and as I was writing it, I'm like, I'm sorry, because he's hungry and he's cold and he's lost. And somehow he uses his culture to push through to figure out how to harvest and how to survive and how to make his way back up the river home. But he is far, far away, and there's moose and bears, and it's scary. And yeah, so I hope that one comes out soon. I'm really excited. We just started editing that one, but that one's a coming out, a next middle grade that will be for our young men.
Oh, amazing. I can't wait until they come out. And when they do, of course, we will share about it in our stories. Thank you so much for talking with us today. This was such a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, everyone who stayed and listened. Hi, Intahawate. I hope you enjoyed the book. Reach out if you have any questions. I just love talking about Buffalo Dreamer. Or if you want to start your role as a writer, an author, I love to answer any questions like that too.
Oh, that's such a generous offer. And speaking of generous offer, she is giving away a copy of Buffalo Dreamer. So today is the last day to enter. If you haven't done it, hop right off and go to our pinned post so you can enter the giveaway. It ends tonight at midnight, so don't miss out. It's an amazing book. And you've got such wonderful comments. Thank you for being so inspiring. Love all the stories you're creating. Thank you all for joining us and for all of your support. And we will be back next week with another interview. If you joined us late, this is going to be up on Instagram in just a few minutes. And if later, it will be on our YouTube channel so you can watch the whole thing from the beginning. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Violet.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.